So that's great. That's the first thing to notice. And then what I was telling you is that for each of the coefficient, we have different information. We have actually the coefficient in the linear regression equation. Then we have the standard error, then the t-value, then the p-value here, and then the significance level. So the most important info by looking at this are the last two columns, the p-value and the significance level. Because these columns tell us about the statistical significance of the independent variable onto the dependent variable. That means it tells us if each of the independent variable has a significant impact on the dependent variable. Okay, so let me first explain what the p-value is. The most important thing to understand is that the lower the p-value is and the most statistically significant your independent variable is going to be. That means that the lower the p-value is, the more impact or effect your independent variable is going to have on the dependent variable. And generally a good threshold to use is the 5% threshold. That means that if your p-value is lower than 5%, then that means that your independent variable would be highly statistically significant, and the more it is above 5%, the less it will be statistically significant. So that's how you must interpret the p-value. And then we have this last column, which is just a faster way of interpreting the coefficients. Because as you can see, we have this line here that explains us about the stars. And basically what the stars mean is that when the p-value is between 0 and 0.1%, then there's going to be 3 stars, which means a highly statistical significance of your independent variable. If the p-value is between 0.1% and 1%, then it's a quite high level of statistical significance. Then if your p-value is between 1% and 5%, then the independent variable is still statistically significant, but will have a less strong effect than the first categories. And then if your p-value is between 5% and 10%, it's borderline. The independent variable might have a certain level of statistical significance, but not that much. Anyway, a lot less than those independent variables that have 3 stars or 2 stars. And then if your p-value is between 10% and 1, then there is absolutely no statistical significance. That means that your independent variable won't have any effect on the dependent variable. So that's very interesting because when we look at our independent variables here, we notice that only one variable has a high statistical significance onto the dependent variable. It's the R&D spend. So it looks like the profit is mainly governed by the R&D spend. That means that it's the R&D spend that has the only strong effect on the profit. So that's a very important information for our investors because they now know that they shouldn't only be looking at the profit itself by, just looking at the maximum profit to decide where to invest, but also it should be looking at the R&D spend variable. It should be looking at the amount spent in R&D to add another criterion in their investment decisions. So that's a very good info, and basically what it means, what all this means is that among all the independent variables here, the only strong predictor of the profit is the R&D spend. The rest is absolutely unuseful. So actually what this means is that we could rewrite this multiple linear regression equation and turn it into a simple linear regression, because since the only independent variable that has an effect on the profit dependent variable is the R&D spend, then the formula could be profit equals R.D.spend, and that would be okay. That would actually give us the same prediction. Okay, so you learned a lot of stuff in this tutorial, but that's very important things to know in linear regression. So congratulations. We only have one tutorial left where we will be predicting the test set results. So I look forward to seeing you there, and until then, enjoy machine learning.